I used to get very affected with what people were saying. But I think it's a skill you've got to learn, especially if you're ambitious, because any single time you try and reach a place where you become visible to other people, there are going to be some people who want to be in your place but can't for whatever other reason. And they're going to hate you for it. And that's on them, but it should not affect you. There are going to be other people who have a very, very specific idea of how something should be. And they're going to hate you for being there if you don't fit that idea, right? And I think this is not just limited to pageants, like at any point, even in politics, for example. It's not that somebody knows you as a person. They just like or dislike what you're doing in the position that you have based on their preferences, right? So I think it was terrible when it was happening, but it was such a good life lesson for me that you need to have decided who your people are and who you're going to take blatant criticism from and who you're going to ignore. Because a lot of times what people are saying about you is not on you, it's on them, because they're feeling all sorts of things that are not in your control.
Hello everyone, my name is Din Long and welcome to the podcast Lifeline. In this podcast, I will interview people who are having a positive impact in their community and have a strong message that deserves to be shared. We will dive deeper into their journey becoming a change maker, and hopefully you can take away some insights for your own journey. And please do subscribe to Lifeline on YouTube, Apple Podcast or any platform that you are using. And also you can share this episode with your friends if you like it. It's really what helps me the most. In this episode, you will be meeting Shaan, a gender, climate and youth empowerment advocate who was selected as Miss Earth India in 2017. We discuss about her life-changing experience with Teach For India, where she discovers the education crisis of her country. We discuss about her transition being a model to live her childhood dream and how she earned her title of Miss Earth India. She walks us through her journey exploring climate action, social entrepreneurship, and now gender equality. She shares with us everything that she learned along the way and also her plans for the future. Hello Shaan, कैसे हो?
मैं बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ. Hi. How are you?
I'm good, tike. Super happy to have you, Shaan, on Lifeline. For the story we met in Bangkok after Linka that I interviewed in the first episode connected us because she was like, oh, you guys, you need to meet because you have one thing in common, which was Jagrati Yatra. So I will not spoil what is a Jagrati Yatra because I'm sure you will speak about it. And then we were supposed to go to Vietnam together to facilitate a program with APYE. Yes, I just went. Event was cancelled, so I sent you some Instagram stories. Let's do this one day if we can. But then, we got reunited again for APYE online. So our paths keep crossing each other. So good to have you today. And I know that you are doing so many things from. I don't want to spoil. But so many things, when I was preparing, I was writing down everything that you do. I was, oh my God, I need 10 hours to interview Shaan. But anyway, let's try to see how far we can go. So maybe we can just start very simply. If you can introduce a bit yourself, where you come from, and very briefly what you are doing currently.
I'm just smiling from year to year right now with that kind of an introduction that you gave for me, where you think you need to introduce me for 10 hours or interview me for 10 hours. Let's see, this is slightly difficult for me introducing myself, but if I were to briefly put everything together, I'm a graduate in filmmaking and media and communication. And I have been a teacher, trainer, facilitator, model, beauty queen, filmmaker in the past few years. I don't know if I missed something, but I have, I think one thing I'm really proud of is that I've been able to do a lot of different things and gain skills from everything that I have done so far. I come from India and I live in central India right now. Because of the pandemic, I've come back home to my parents. yeah, that's, I think, a good starting point for us.
So from all the words that you just said, which one did you start with in your life?
In terms of work experience, in terms of starting my career, so I finished my filmmaking degree, and in the last month of my degree, before people look for jobs, there was this woman who came to campus to talk about her NGO. So we had the founder of this NGO called Teach For India, who came in and she spoke about the educational crisis in India. And I had decided that after college, I was going to join the media industry in terms of either my first aspiration was to become a wildlife documentary filmmaker. But it's not easy to do that. It requires a lot of training, a lot of patience. It is very different from anything that you learn in filmmaking for industries. And so in terms of something financially lucrative, I thought I'll start my career from either working with media companies like, say, MTV. That's one of the places that I interned at. Or that I would assist on a movie because, Bollywood is huge. Everybody knows about it. So I thought, that's the path I was going to take. But this woman came in and she spoke about how there are students and children in our country, and so many of them. So at that point of time, I think the number was 320 million children in India don't have access to a quality education. And many of them either drop out of school. And they were really, when she gave this presentation, she spoke about a lot of stark numbers. She also said that only 10% of Indians graduate high school. And so in that 1 hour, everything changed for me. I thought about my education. I thought about where I came from. All the statistics that she talked about and the work that they do, everything that she talked about really resonated with me. And in that moment, I, while the presentation was going on, was reflecting upon my life and why I was sitting in the room that I was sitting in, because the college that I studied in was one of the best colleges for filmmaking in my country. And I just thought, so how has that happened? How am I here? How did I make it here? Like, did I do something extraordinary to be here? And the truth is, no, I hadn't done something extraordinary. I just followed a path that since the beginning was defined for me by my parents or, other children, my friends. So it was such a taken for granted thing that, yeah, everybody goes to school and everybody goes to college. So I've got to figure that out for myself. But I think this was the first time that I thought about how this is not a reality for a majority of this country. And so that really moved me. I don't know what took over me. After that presentation, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went back home, I looked at their application, and I just went in and I thought, and the questions in the application are very reflective. Like, you have to think about your life and the challenges in your life and why you're applying. And I filled the application and I didn't know whether I would get in. It's a highly selective fellowship. Only I think 7 to 10% of people get selected every year. And so I didn't know if I would make it, but I was like, okay, I'm feeling very strongly about this. I should go ahead and apply. They had a long selection process. And after that, I got selected. So I was very happy. I didn't fully grasp what I had signed up for at that point of time. And the next thing I knew, we trained for 6 weeks in the city called Pune in India. And after that, in this training, we just learned what education encompasses and how, because we are not trained, everyone who goes into the fellowship, most of us are not trained teachers. We don't have a degree in education. So in those 6 weeks, we learned how to teach, and we taught a class, like a mock class where there were children and we had to kind of understand how we are working, get feedback from our managers. 6 weeks later, I was placed in a school in one of the largest slums in India, in Malbani in Mumbai. So I picked up everything, all of my stuff, and I moved to Mumbai. And it was also my first job, right? So at that point of time, I was like, okay, so my first job, so I'm not going to take any money from home. I'm not going to ask for any money from anyone. And Mumbai is an incredibly expensive city to live in, especially for Indian standards. It's crazy. The rent is typically um, more than people's salary when they're starting off. And so, and so, I basically called back home and my parents were like, okay, but you were studying the media. Like, how are you teaching now? What is happening? But they were still very supportive. They were like, okay, like if you've thought this through, then go ahead and do it. But I was like, okay, I'm not going to take any money from home. And the fellowship stipend, even though it's a fantastic opportunity, is quite low. Um, and I looked at a lot of places to live in, and everything was over my budget. Like, forget food and transport, like, I couldn't even pay for my rent. So eventually, what happened is that I looked at a slum rehabilitation building, and the prices of that building were lower because there's just a sense of like community people who have actually lived in the slums at some point also reside in that building. And I was like, you know what? Like, if I've taken up this challenge, I'm going to like live whatever I can afford in. So I'm not going to look for like a good place for myself. I'm just going to live, like, I need a roof over my head. I'm going to work really hard at school. So I moved into a slum rehabilitation building, and it's definitely like one of those experiences that completely changed who I am and how I think, and gave me like on ground experience of what it means, like what education means in India, and what are the loopholes and what are the other sectors that affect education in the classroom. I taught 75 children in an under-resourced, underserved, low-income government school.
When you say 75 children in the same classroom?
Yes, in the same classroom.
Oh.
I did have a co-teacher, but while we were teaching, like only one person could be in the class. So I taught English and science to my children. My co-teacher taught and social sciences. And I also taught arts and whatever else I was interested in because I wanted to bring more of me into the classroom. But and I was 21 at this time. So when you're 21 and you have to, and there's 75 kids who are watching you, it's a lot of pressure. And you have to just be sure of what you're saying. You have to be sure of how you're behaving because they will learn things from you, consciously or unconsciously. And so I taught these children, but I think one of the most grounding sections of the experience is just the fact that your work is not limited to teaching the two subjects. Your work is also to understand why some students are struggling in your classroom. Now, I was teaching a fourth grade classroom, but the difficulty was that when I entered that fourth grade classroom, there were some children who were not even at a level where they spoke basic English, or knew how to, identify each letter or know the phonetics. They couldn't. And then there were some kids who were at fourth grade level. So there was a whole range that I was teaching. And so it was very difficult to kind of understand how do I give instruction in English, but also make sure that those who don't know how to read, how do I build that capability in them? We were also asked to get to know the families of these children. So after school, we used to go and meet the families just to understand, like, if a child is struggling in the classroom, is it because of the subject or because there's something going on at home that is really affecting this child? So it could be, and I realized that, we tell a lot of our teachers that, you're not doing enough. That's why kids are not performing. But the truth is that your kid could not be performing because he's not having enough nutrition. Your kid could not be performing because there's something going on at home. There could be violence or abuse, or they could it could also be like a breakup in a relationship within the family, right? These are difficult things for children to grasp. It could also be the lack of other opportunities, no incentives, nothing that excites the child. And so there were so many different things affecting the learning in the classroom. And this is something that I didn't consciously realize before that, because it's very easy. I think, especially in India, I think the mindset is that you teach if you don't get any other job, or you teach if you, don't know how to do anything else, or you're not great at anything else, so you're teaching. In some spaces, that is the mindset. And it was a very humbling experience to know that it's very easy to go and criticize a teacher, while the teacher is actually responsible for so much more than just teaching the subjects that they have to teach. So yeah, that was my first year of experience. I did a lot more in the fellowship, but like you said, it's going to take 10 hours, so I'm going to stop here.
When did you realize that your role as teacher was more than just teaching your subjects?
Since the very first day, I think. number one, since it was my first job, obviously, like I knew it was going to be difficult, but it was beyond difficult and it was very challenging because it was very different from the education I had had. So the very first day, like meeting the other teachers of the school or meeting the children or their parents who were very eager to know who the new teacher in the class is, the very first day I realized that it was not going to be easy because the way I studied in an all-girls convent school, which had strict rules, we followed the rules. I had opportunities that I took part in, but it was a very disciplined environment where even if you had like 50 students in a classroom, it was very easy to manage that classroom because we knew what the norms were. We knew why we were there. But when I entered this classroom, like that sense of, oh, my education is important and I need to focus was just not there. Not with kids, not with the parents. And so we had to start from scratch saying that, this is not just an add-on to your life. It's actually a very important part of your life. And investing parents into also with, girl children, just saying that girls have to come to school. Like you can't just keep them at home to do the chores of the house. There are so many struggles that low-income families go through. Sometimes it's about how do you get food on the table. So obviously that takes precedence over sending your child to school, right? And so just having like many, many conversations was important. So I knew since the first day that it was not like a typical school that I studied in, and I had to unlearn a lot of things to be able to teach there.
And so I'm wondering, as teacher, like if when you realize that, for example, like some kids don't go to school because they don't have or cannot focus because they don't have like enough food to eat, what can you do as a teacher? I mean, in that situation.
I think it's for me as a teacher, like of course I had boundaries. I couldn't go and tell the parents that, stop doing whatever you're doing and like just send your children to school and get the money from somewhere, because it's not as easy as that. But my job as a teacher was definitely to have multiple conversations with them, understand where they're coming from, and say that I think this was a debate about, okay, you're sending your boy to school, but you're not sending your girl to school because you think that she can go ahead and help you in cleaning someone's house or in the work that you're doing. But what's actually happening is that your girl's also going to have the same life as you are if you don't give her education. So her earning potential or her potential to be independent and earn a livelihood depends a lot on her education at this point. But you're taking that away if you're telling her that, she belongs in the house to do like extra things or go to work with the mom. And so my job was to have those conversations. And I think it helped that I was also a female role model in the school, because in that position, I could say that, it was never about telling parents that you're wrong. It was always about, yes, like this is a very difficult situation, but I am where I am because my parents let me like educate myself. Obviously, the scenarios are very different and it's never black and white. But I think what I was able to do, and these changes take a lot of time. They don't happen overnight. It's not like you've had one conversation and the parents like completely convinced that, yes, they should send their girl to school. That never happens. It's never that transformational. But I think you plant a seed in their head and you keep having these conversations. And if they see value in you as a person and in what you've done, then maybe there's a chance that, they might have a change of mind and they might consider being more invested in someone's education. So yeah, I think we tried doing that. I wouldn't say that in the 2 years I was a fellow that I was able to completely transform everybody's way of thinking, or that I learned all the challenges that they were going through, but at least I think it was a start when I was working with them.
I see. So yeah, no, super interesting. And so you stayed 2 years there?
Yeah, the fellowship was only for 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, it's interesting because you were studying, you wanted to be a filmmaker, then you had this sort of, aha moment when, I mean, you said it's like the first time you questioned a bit the path that you are taking, and then you switched to education in very grassroots, I guess, community. And now that, so you're in this new world where, I guess you love it, and then fellowship comes to an end. So what do you tell yourself?
At the end of the fellowship, I actually wasn't very sure which part. So I knew as a skill, teaching was not something I was exceptionally good at. There were some things that I could still learn, but it also wasn't something that teaching, as in like just learning about subjects and delivering that content in the classroom, was not something that I saw myself doing in the long run, especially for like primary school children. And I had to think of like, where do I fit in the education landscape? Because there's so many things that you can do within education. This was my first experience. Plus, of course, like once you end the fellowship, there's no compulsion that you have to stay in the education sector. Basically, what happens is that, for example, if I studied filmmaking, I could have very easily decided that, I've done my part. I've taught for 2 years. The fellowship is over. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to filmmaking. But in those 2 years, I'd also kept in touch with all of my classmates who were in the film industry. And I'd heard of their experience and what they liked or disliked. And I realized that with the kind of person I am, maybe working in the media industry directly wasn't what I wanted to do. I was still interested in making films, but independently. I was not interested in working because my friends were working in those places. So I knew what the culture was like. I knew what the struggles were, what the achievements were like. And I, at that point of time, didn't feel like I wanted to invest time and energy into it. I applied for a job within Teach for India. And I stayed with them for 2 more years because I was like, okay, so I've gone through this experience. I've learned so much. How do I give back? But also from a personal like growth perspective, I'd grown so much in the fellowship that I thought that now that I'm actually going to get into a job, I might as well continue working with this organization and see how I can grow. So I applied within Teach for India, and my role was to work with the alumni of the fellowship. So trying to understand like what education spaces do our alumni want to go into, what kind of jobs, what kind of organizations they want to set up in the future. So that was the first year. And the second year, my manager realized that, of course, like I'd done filmmaking. So he realized my strengths in communication and storytelling. And because it was a very new team, the alumni team, I had the opportunity to become the communications point person. And so I traveled across the cities where Teach for India was existing in India. So it was, it's 7 cities in India, but I traveled to 3 or 4 cities to just make short documentaries on the lives of people who had, left their high-paying jobs or their previous experiences to work in the community. So there were a lot of people, like I said, most of us were not trained as teachers, but there were a lot of people who decided to stay in the education space after the fellowship. So I sat down with my manager and picked some of who these people were, and then went in. And we didn't have a lot of equipment or budget at that point of time. So I was like, no, I can still do it. So I took a DSLR, like a semi-professional DSLR, and I took one of the headphones, like earphones, the normal phone earphones, and I chopped off the earphone part and just kept the microphone. And I would clip it with a bobby pin onto whoever was speaking, because we didn't have the equipment at that point of time. But I was very determined I'll actually record these stories. So I created, I think, around 7 documentaries at that point of time, along with whatever communications, like graphic design or any communication that had to go out to the rest of the alumni network, as well as social media. So that's what I was managing in the next 2 years.
Okay. So yeah, it's like, you close the loop. So you come back.
Yes, I did.
in making.
I did. It was a great time. I had a great, inspiring time just recording the videos of these individuals, specifically just trying to understand their motivation of why they would not probably go back to the job that they had before, or in some cases they didn't even know like where the money was going to come from, but they were like very sure that they wanted to work with the community. One of the stories that I recorded was of a woman in Mumbai, and she basically, after the fellowship, started working with the mothers of the children to teach them some skills like with paper and cloth, and then started making products from those, and started selling that out. The profits that they made from the sales, they were that went directly to the mothers of the children. And in this entire story, she also helped these women understand how to save, how to, the banking system, how to save up. And these women started funds for their children for their higher education. So it was such a incredibly powerful story to learn about, but also like record and then edit and share it with the rest of the community. That, yeah, it was, I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. That was amazing.
Yeah, for me, it looks like Teach for India is a sort of very long incubator. You spend 2 years really understanding the problem. And then from what you understood, this woman, she started to work with the parents. You wanted to continue in this sector.
Yeah, I think the fellowship is designed in a way and it gives you such a grounding experience. And especially if you're just out of college, like it really changes the way that you think or how you thought the world actually works. Like it changes all of that. And so you can definitely get out of Teach for India, but you can't get the Teach for India out of you. And that's, I think a lot of people will resonate with this. So yeah, I think it still exists. Like whatever I learned in many ways in the way that I function, it still exists in the way I work today, even though I'm not working directly with the organization.
So you decided to leave after 4 years, or
yes.
what?
This was more from a personal growth and significance place. Teach for India is also is a place that teaches you to reflect a lot. And this is about yourself, about your classroom, about the children you're teaching, about the community that you work with. And in this, once you build the habit of reflecting, I think there came a time where I thought of like, what are the things that I wanted to do? And one of them was enter like a beauty pageant. I don't like to say the word beauty too much, but I like to say pageant because I wanted to enter a pageant. Mostly because growing up in India in the 90s, I think the women who won, and there were quite a few from India at that point of time, they became role models and like inspirations overnight. And everybody looked up to them growing up. I looked up to them growing up. And it just opened the kind of doors that you wouldn't imagine anything else opening for you. It also, and plus these women were so poised and they spoke so well. There was such good influences on other people that I think it was at the back of my head. And being in a media college, my college was actually placed right next to a design college, like fashion design, industrial design, either way. So they had fashion shows. And because I was one of the taller women in my class, I used to like just go and participate in those. And I was not groomed at all as a person at that point of time, but I just had so much fun with the music and the, walking on stage. So I used to really like doing that. And so by the 4th year, I realized like I seriously wanted to do this because by this time, I think I was 23 years old or 24 years old about this time. And I was like, okay, so pageant has a deadline. So they have a deadline at around 25, 26, 27 years. So there are different pageants in the world. And some of them, for example, if you've heard of Miss World and Miss Universe, they have a age, cutoff by 25, 26. And I was like, if I don't do it now, then I'm never doing it, right? And so in my last year of Teach for India, I had made up my mind that, I want to at least go and audition and see what happens. And I had no experience in, walking in heels or putting on makeup, or I didn't have role models at home, whoever did that. So I have an elder sister and my mom, both of them were just never interested. They're very simple people and never put on any makeup like growing up, except for if they were going for a wedding. And the only makeup we owned at home was for my dance performances, because I was learning classical dance growing up. So that's the kind of household I grew up in. So this was a very alien space for me. But I still wanted to do it. Like in my head, it was like, I would regret it if I don't. So I went in my last year of Teach for India, I went into a pageant. I went and got a pageant coach for myself. She's a very renowned pageant coach. And she was in the same city that I was working in. So I was like, I'm going to give this some time. And I went and I coached under her for a month, and she took us through, everything about what is required to be in a pageant, how do you speak, how do you smile, how do you walk, how do you, it's really interesting because, and I laughed a lot on this particular day when we were practicing how to smile, because it's such a weird thing when you think about it, right? Like the fact that you have to practice how to smile
Yeah.
on stage. It's hilarious. But yeah, I think these are like really important things, because I think in pageants, like you're photographed all the time and you don't want a picture in which you look like a really mean person.
So to come back on this, so I guess what you say is you need to be able to like have a fake smile which doesn't look fake, or how?
I wouldn't say it's a fake smile, but it's like if you're representing yourself in front of a lot of different people, like when you're on stage, you should have a pleasant personality. So I wouldn't say it's a fake smile, but also because it's a responsibility and you want to present as yourself as someone who's approachable. You want to present yourself as someone who people can look up to, right? So in terms of, and this happens, I think any single person who has reached, a higher position in their work or whatever, like as such, they have PR teams and stylists for the purpose that, they look presentable to the outside world. It's not natural. I wouldn't say that smiling on stage for like 2 hours is a natural thing to do, but I think it comes with the responsibility of, either competing or winning the title, because you're kind of playing a role. It's a job at the end of the day. And yeah, I think like it's very disorienting when you think that somebody will practice smiling, but what happens is that once you've smiled for 2 hours, your jaw is like, okay, I don't want to do it anymore. So you've got to take breaks, but without seeming mean or like you have a problem with somebody else on stage or whatever. So this is really funny, but I went through this training and I learned a lot. So I think I wasn't very groomed as a person in terms of how I present myself or how I speak to people. And even though like these skills are very specific to pageants, I think some of them are very relevant to anyone, anywhere, anytime. And at that point in time, when I came out of the training, I thought to myself that even if this doesn't work out, at least I've learned something that I'll use no matter what happens. I went for a couple of auditions in my last year at Teach For India, and they didn't go very well. I got selected for a few of them, but then got rejected at a later round. And then my last audition, while I was still at Teach For India, I went for the audition and I got selected for like in the first few rounds of selection. This was just one audition. So they selected a few people and then a few people and then they rejected some, and it kept happening. And I reached till the end before they selected the people who were to go to nationals. And it was between me and another girl. And so they selected the other girl and they didn't select me. And so at this point of time, I was like, you know what, like I've done 3 or 4 of these, and I should go and ask them like what's wrong and what I can do better, because obviously I don't have too much time. So I went and I asked them, and one of the judges was like really, she was very sweet, but she very blatantly like told me that, when you speak, like your mouth looks really rough, like you look really rough as a person. And it's the kind of feedback which can really mess with you, because and I just want to be honest, because I'm out of pageantry now, but I just want to be honest about this. I came back home and I kept looking at my teeth for like the next 2 hours, and I was like, what is wrong with my face? And then over the next 2 days, I found 100 things wrong with me. And so it's the kind of like feedback that they give you, because I think they also know people are unforgiving in like a pageant. Like if they don't like the way you look, they can literally like not like you as a person. And at that point of time, obviously, like it was a very hard hitting like feedback. I was like, okay, this is a part of my face. What do you want me to do? And I came back, and initially, like I felt very insecure about myself. I felt, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't know how I should proceed from here. And so I called up home and I said, you know what, like I'm feeling very insecure and I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be like in a pageant, because I don't know what I can do about like my teeth or my jaw in any way. And I called back home and I said that, I'm just going to go back and focus on my job now. And my mom on the other side of the line, she said, do you think that just the fact that, this judge said that it was only your teeth, like, do you think that's the only thing, like, do you think you're giving your best apart from whatever the feedback that you received today? And then she said that this is something that you've always wanted to do. And it's totally fine if you want to go back to your job, but you've just gone for like 2 or 3 of these auditions so far. And you've gone through 1 month of training, right? So since there's a deadline at 27, do you want to give up now and then at 27 think, oh, what if I had gone for a pageant and maybe I would have won, maybe I would have auditioned again? Or do you want to like give you 100%? And then if it doesn't work, then at least you can say it to yourself that it was not meant for me because I gave my 100%, it still didn't work. So I thought about it and she was right. I thought she was right that, I will feel at some time that, I didn't give my 100% because 80% of my brain was in my job. 80% of just my energy. And Teach For India is a very different place, right? Like your priorities are completely different from looking at how you look or how you present yourself because you have a different focus. And so I took the call and I talked to my manager. He was very supportive. And I quit my job and I came back home to prepare. I came back, I lost 11 kgs of weight, in a very healthy way, by the way. I don't want anybody to think that you should just, because there's a lot of controversy around how you lose weight, but I didn't want to kill myself. So I started eating super healthy. I started running, I started going to the gym. I also started building up understanding what my story is and how I present myself to other people. For 1 year, I also had braces. So I went to an orthodontist and I checked with them whether there was any point in doing anything with my teeth. So what happens in beauty pageants is that sometimes there are quick fixes. There are a lot of quick cosmetic fixes that people do, right? So if you don't have thick, luscious hair, you just get extensions. Or if you don't have long lashes, you just get extensions again. You get fake lashes, right? And so for teeth, there's this thing called veneers. So what they do is that they file your actual original teeth and then they put really perfect teeth on top of your original teeth, right? And so it was suggested to me that I do that, but I was absolutely, there are 0 ways that I'm going to do that to myself. And I was very I drew the line and I said, there is a point till which I'm willing to work. And if it's not working beyond that point, I'm not going to do more. So I decided I didn't want to get veneers. I really like my teeth. But whatever, some of my teeth were not in line. And I talked to an orthodontist and he said that it may be good for you just in general as you grow older to get braces, not just from a cosmetic perspective, but also just so that, because I was getting new wisdom teeth. And it was all pushing my teeth to the front. So they extracted my wisdom teeth first, and then they put braces. So I had that for 1 year. And then before my final audition, because I was already, I think, 25 and a half or something now, I decided that I wanted to go for the auditions of Miss Earth, which is an environmentally inclined pageant. And as I said at the beginning of this call, I wanted to be a wildlife documentary filmmaker. And that comes from the fact that my father was in the forest services for about 30 years. He's retired now, but for 30 years, he worked to protect and conserve the forests and the national parks in India. So I've kind of grown up in that family where it's very important to think about your environment. And my 2 of my internships were with, one was with a wildlife magazine and one was with Worldwide Fund for Nature. And I was like, you know what, I have a backing and I have a passion to actually work on this. So I'm going to go for a pageant where I'm not going to speak superficially about anything, but I'm actually going to speak from experience about what I know about the environment, and I'm going to do my own advocacy because that's a part of pageants. So I quit my job, worked on these things. It was a very difficult time because what happens is that modeling you need to have some modeling experience in order to do well in a pageant because you need good pictures or just have some good videos of yourself because people are going to be watching you the whole time. And so the difficulty was that I had to keep going for different activities of the pageant to another city. So I couldn't do a job. But at the same time, modeling, the way modeling works is that you hear from a modeling photo shoot like once in 2 months or like once in 20 days. And so what are you doing for 15 days? What are you doing for those 2 months, right? It's very mentally exhausting to think, okay, when is my next project going to come? And I didn't want to do that to myself. So I said, what can I do with the time that I have? So I started collaborating with different environmental organizations. I was like, if I'm building my advocacy, if I want to learn more, I might as well just volunteer my time wherever I can. So I started going across my city, across my country, to just participate in different environmental events, whether it was like a beach cleanup or whether it was planting trees or a seminar on climate change. I also worked with an organization where together we created a quiz for children for 140 teams that was focused on around environmental issues to just raise awareness. So I started working on small and medium-sized projects in a volunteer capacity, and in some cases as a part-time employee of the organization. I also started writing a little bit about climate change. All of these things happened. And then after, I think I got selected first for the regionals, then for the nationals. And then finally, when the time for my pageant came, so on the day of the pageant, we were all on stage and somebody came and announced, one of the organizers came and announced that, sorry, this pageant is cancelled because of so-and-so reason. So 8 months after me quitting my job and, working so hard, they just canceled the pageant on stage. And at that point of time, obviously, nobody knew that this could happen. So everybody on stage was just like, okay, what is happening? Nobody knows what is happening. And we got off the stage and we all just went and we were all obviously upset, but we didn't know why the pageant was cancelled in the first place. Anyway, so we all came back home and we were all really, really upset. And after this whole thing went down, I came back home and I remember like just lying in bed looking at my ceiling thinking, okay, so I don't have a job and my pageant's not happening. And I don't have a, like, I'm not going to school this year. Like, I don't have admission to any school. And like, that serious fear of, okay, what am I going to do next? Like, what happens now? Right. And I'm 25 at this point. So I'm like my options are completely running out. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do and how am I going to explain to someone, even if I go look for a new job, like, how am I going to explain to them that I quit a perfectly good job to be in a pageant that didn't really work and I don't have anything to show for it. So yeah, it was a very difficult time. I'm really glad that I can laugh about it now. But at that point of time, it was like serious fear of like what's next and I don't know what I'm looking forward to. And I did take some time out for myself and I applied. Thankfully, what worked out was that I had applied for a climate journalism fellowship and I got in. So that meant that 3 weeks after this happened, I was invited to report from the 5th Asia Pacific Climate Change Adaptation Forum from Sri Lanka. And so that was something definitely to look forward to. And I went there and I met this incredible team from this organization called Climate Tracker. And I learned quite a bit over there. And then I came back and I started working part-time for them, like in the next few months, like whenever a project would come up or if there was a grant, I started working for them. But largely, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, okay, so I will apply to a school. So one of the schools that I had always wanted to go to was the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism in New York. It was set up by Joseph Pulitzer himself. And so it was like a dream school. And I was like, you know what, I'm not going to spend time thinking about 10 schools I want to apply to because there's just not enough time. This was already around October and applications for schools closed by December. And so I was like, okay, I'll focus on this, give my everything, and I'll apply. And so I did that. And I continued to grow my network in the way of working with different organizations. So I kept volunteering my time, took up part-time roles, kept doing that for a while. I went for another modeling competition, won that, thankfully. and went to London to represent India, which was again great. So one thing or the other, because of everything that I was working on in this year, this was 2016. Because of everything that I'd started working on with different organizations, other people started approaching me to do more. And that was good. And because of my experience as a finalist and my modeling experience, then winning this modeling competition became easier. And then going to London again built more credibility. Then I got shortlisted for the London Fashion Week, worked for 5 designers there. So things worked out in bits and pieces, but they worked out. And this is also around the time when I got through APYE. So for anybody listening, Asia Pacific Youth Exchange is an important connection between me and Din Long, mostly because I went for the Asia Pacific Youth Exchange in Thailand. And as I speak further, perhaps this would make more sense. But yeah, it's an exchange program, and I took part in it, and I learned more about sustainable development goals and social innovation and entrepreneurship. Made a lot of friends from different places in Asia and even outside of Asia and the Pacific. And yeah, all of these things happened. I built my profile. Like I really worked very hard to build my profile, both for modeling and my advocacy. So by this time I had a binder full of things I had done in both of these scenarios. And I sent it off to Miss Earth saying that, last year you just didn't do the pageant. And I was a finalist like up till the end. So I sent everything. And while I was at London Fashion Week, I got a call from Miss Earth, like the franchise holder for India. And they said that they thankfully did go through my binder. And so this person interviewed me about everything that I had accomplished, about what I was doing at that moment. And thankfully, it was that fortunate time when I was at the fashion week. So she was, so it worked out pretty well that way. And it was decided then with all the work that I'd done in the previous year and this year that I would be representing India at Miss Earth in that year. The craziest thing though is that I had 1 week to prepare for an international pageant. Yeah.
So I have a lot of questions now. But no, yeah, I think, yeah. So to come back a bit before, so you were at the final, they cancelled, and you were like, okay, no one has no clue why. And then you were like, okay, so you just kept on, trying on pageants, building, creating your network and experiences around your advocacy. And then everything just connected again. And so what's interesting is, so wait, you said you call Miss Earth, basically?
No, I didn't call them. I wrote to them a number of times. Like it wasn't that, I know that it all looks very connected in retrospect, but when I was going through it, nothing was connected. And I genuinely, if I'm being very honest, I didn't know what I was doing. But it was technically my last year to participate. So Miss Earth also has a deadline at, I think, 26. You need to be less than 27 years old to participate. So I was like, if I hadn't gone that year, I would not be eligible to go after that.
So your goal was always to participate, to the... When you say participate, you mean to the international pageant?
Yes, I definitely... So for me, I never had the aspiration. So in India, what happens is a lot of times because pageants are a way of being seen and recognized. A lot of people choose to go in the media industry or become anchors in TV shows or be a part of Bollywood or start modeling professionally. So for them, it's really, really helpful. The experience directly connects to that path. But for me, and a lot of women, when they start modeling at 18 years old, it does seem like a natural and perfect path to go to, and pageants really help because it builds credibility. But I was already 24 by the time that I was actually participating or auditioning for pageants. And I had already built some experience in the education, social development sector. So my way of thinking than most people that I was competing against was quite different, I would say. And even while I was going through this, my only thought was that if I've invested so much time and effort and even money in some cases, because you need to buy the makeup and the hair and the gowns and the whatnot, and you need to travel so much, I might as well, it would be good if something comes out of that experience. If there is something credible that I can say about myself once that once I stopped trying for that experience anymore. And so I think I took a leap of faith in the next year saying that, okay, this is my last year. If it happens, great, but I can't go down without trying, which is why I kept building my portfolio and my profile to say that, okay, I have built this much credibility now, and I'm going to do my best and try my luck. And if it works, great. But I want to be able to say to myself that, I tried everything. I think that was the mindset I was coming with, because I never thought I wanted to be a part of Bollywood or that I wanted to become a model full time. I knew that I really liked the work that I did with Teach For India. I really liked working in the social development sector, not just because of the work we do, but because of the kind of people who work in the social development sector who had taught me so much. So I at this point, I wasn't really sure if I were to go into a job, like what that job would be, because there were so many experiences that had just happened. But in that year, I think one thing I was clear about is that if there is a chance, I will take it. And I sent my entire binder to them saying that if the competition is happening, I didn't know whether they're doing an on-ground competition or not. So I said, please consider me to compete again, like this year as well. But after 2 or 3 follow-ups and there was no competition happening and I didn't know what was happening at all, it was after all of that I was called in, at London Fashion Week for the interview, which was just 1 week before the pageant. So by this time I was like, no way, like anything is going to happen, because the pageant is going to start next week. And it was like a very tricky time, but it just happened. I think it's such a huge lesson into not giving up and actually asking questions and trying. And if I'd not done that, I definitely am proud of myself for pushing through and trying everything that I could have. I knew for a fact in 2017, if they had launched the competition again in India, I would have competed. But they hadn't done that, so I tried any other way that there was.
So you were really driven by not willing to have regrets, right? I mean, from what your mom said to you.
I was really driven by giving my best and whatever that meant to me at that point of time. I wasn't thinking so much about regret then, but it's making sense to me. In retrospect, talking about regret makes sense, because maybe at this I would have thought, oh, I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that. But I don't think that way, because I think I did everything that I could have done.
And just to clarify something on pageants, and then I really want to hear the story of the final. But so, you speak a lot about advocacy. So is it something specific to Miss Earth, or is it something specific to pageants in general? I mean, in every pageant.
I think it's a really beautiful thing that pageants have a space for advocacy, mostly because it's a platform where thousands of people start recognizing you. And if you have that kind of influence, if people are listening to you, you should be able to use that platform to sensitize people about things that are important. And so the way that I look at it, initially when I went in, of course, there's a lot of talk around pageants, and me also coming from the background of Teach For India. Of course, there were colleagues and there were, acquaintances who said that, why are you going into a pageant? It promotes body image issues, and it promotes, people say that they care about something, but they don't care about whatever they're working for. And of course, these are some of the feedback that I received at that point of time. And a lot of times, it comes from a place of people actually working in those sectors and then thinking the purpose of this entire cause is being diluted when somebody just randomly talks about that issue. But for me, I think a lot of my biases also broke in the process, because I wasn't someone who was okay, drop dead gorgeous and my hair is perfect or my face is perfect or my skin is perfect. I never saw myself that way. So it was definitely not because I thought I had no body image issues that I entered something like this, but it was despite the fact that I had body image issues that I entered because I wanted to stop feeling that way about myself. And I already shared that story of me staring at my face and thinking about how there are 100 things wrong with me. But I basically wanted to go in and I also came from the mindset of saying, oh, a lot of women, like these women who go into pageants, they don't care about what they're talking about, but they're talking about it. But I think I ended up breaking a lot of my biases in the way that I met so many incredible women from all across the world who are working on what they feel passionately about because they've gone through a personal experience that connects to that specific issue. And it is, so for example, if someone is an engineer, but they're passionate about education and they're talking about it, so they're not a full-time educator, right? But I don't ever look down on an engineer saying that this person's talking about education, even though that person has no experience in, teaching before. And so I changed my mindset in saying that, yes, like these women, like the full-time job, maybe being a model, maybe being like a TV personality. But at the end of the day, they have the platform and the influence, and they are using it for a good thing. So like, why not support that? I also knew at the same time that I wanted to do the best that I can to learn more about the environment instead of talking about it like just superficially. So it is a part of pageants, and some people make the most of it within the pageants. But like I said, there are a lot of other things, a lot of other opportunities for anyone who enters a pageant. So some people choose that path and some people choose this.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you said when you said, growing up in the 90s and, looking at this woman winning pageant and, you realized already that they had a lot of influence. And it's what you wanted to also bring to the table, like with your advocacy on climate, education. I think it's great. And so now I really want to, can you, so how did it go? So you had 1 week to prepare.
I had 1 week to prepare. It was so stressful. I don't think I've still reached a place where I can laugh about it, because it was definitely like the most stressful week I've ever had, because I had in front of me what was an opportunity of a lifetime to represent my country and be called India for a whole month. And I wanted to do a good job at it. Like, that was the only thing in my mind. But at the same time, before you go into a pageant, like, there are a lot of things that you need to get done. So you need to have your portfolio ready, you need to have your video ready, you need to have your, they send a list of things that you need to have in terms of the clothes that you're going to wear. So like some occasions you need to wear gowns, and some occasions you need to wear dresses, and some occasions you need to wear a t-shirt and jeans. So they give you an entire list of the events that are going to happen, and you need to figure out, like you need to find out the best clothing that you can get, because styling and how you dress and how you present yourself is very important, because a lot of thousands of people who are not with you at the pageant are going to judge you simply on the basis of a picture that somebody clicked of you at that event. So it was very stressful, because some of these events are like evening gown round or national costume round, and you can't just you can't be like, okay, somebody's going to bring me all these things. You need to look into all of these things. You need to send your profile. They ask you some questions. So every single time you go up on stage, they would read something about you. And you may have seen, if you've ever seen pageants, what happens is when a contestant comes on the stage, someone in the background is actually saying something about them, and that's stuff that's taken from stuff that you have told them about you in a very, very long form that you need to fill before you go. So all these things were there, and obviously this came very last minute for me. So I was very stressed out, and I was nothing else in the last 7 days. I don't think there was any point where I was not stressed, and I don't think there was any point that my mood changed from anything but being anxious. Except I think on the last day when I was really excited that, it's happening and I'm going and it's so cool. But yeah, I basically spent my last 7 days before the pageant just prepping for the pageant and making sure that I have everything. Unfortunately, there wasn't typically a franchise. So for example, if somebody is leading a pageant in a specific country, sometimes what happens is if they have sponsors, they support the person who's representing the country by giving them a stylist or giving them giving them a budget to work with for their clothes and their hair and makeup and like other video creation and everything. I did not have that support, unfortunately. So it made it even harder. So it was just me, and my family didn't know anything about pageants. So there was no help from that side. And then because it was such a short time, like I couldn't fall back on friends to help me with it because it was so targeted. And I was like, I have to do everything on my own. So it was very exhausting. But finally, like I had everything that I needed to go, and I went. And the pageant was in the Philippines. I will have to say, like, I have seen the formats of other pageants and I have not attended them, but I think it would be safe to say that in terms of the experience, Miss Earth is an outstanding pageant because it happens in the Philippines, and most of the times it has also happened in Austria in the past, I think. But over the 30 days, they take you to different events all across the Philippines. And it was like one of those experiences that you can never forget. One of the other things that I mentioned, nobody remembers you by name. So they just call you by your sash, which is India. So I was called India for a whole month. And I think the kind of pride that I felt with just being called that for an entire month is something that I think would be unparalleled, like for the rest of my life. Obviously, I know now that I did my best, but that best wasn't enough in terms of just being prepared for the scale at which this event was happening. And so I knew what my strengths were. My strengths were communicating. My strengths were knowing a lot about the environment at the pageant. And so I played to my strengths mostly. Made some incredible friends in the process. Like I said, went to like some really beautiful places in the Philippines, learned about some parts of the history of the Philippines, went to some environmental events as well. But at the end of the day, it is a competition. The beautiful thing about Miss Earth again was that at no point did I feel pressured in the way of like any of my co-contestants making me feel like, oh, somebody's like really competing with me or anything. Everybody was so friendly and like so giving. And I had different roommates at different points of the competition. But I think like there was an understanding and camaraderie around the fact that we were all on the same boat and we were all equally stressed, because I think there is so much pressure from pageant fans, and there's so much pressure from your countries and the fact that you're the only representative of your country, that everyone within the pageant is very supportive of each other because you're pretty much like on the same boat in many of the experiences. So that's how the whole pageant went. We had like a whole month of traveling around and going to different events, and and we had some competitions along the way as well, like the national costume, the gown round, the swimwear round, and whatnot. But it is on the last 4 days of the pageant that your rehearsals start, and rehearsals for the big stage, and that the final like competitions, the main competitions that are counted towards the finale happen. So there are 3 things. One was at Miss Earth, one was about your beauty and poise. So basically you don't get to put any makeup and you go in front of judges and they judge you on just the way that you look. The second is figure and form. So they judge you on how fit you are or what your figure is like or whatever. The third was environmental awareness and intelligence. And so they interview you, like a panel of judges interview you. The questions can come from anywhere, but because it's an environmental pageant, it's good to know about the environment because some of the questions are about the environment. Like I said, I played to my strengths and I did really well in the environment round. One thing I definitely want to say is that I know there are a lot of people who laugh at pageant answers, but I think the most difficult part about answering a pageant question isn't how much you like. It isn't about how much knowledge you have, or it isn't about like what do you honestly feel about something, but it's about what is the most relevant answer that you can give or think of within 10 seconds that makes sense and has to last 30 seconds. You need to decide all these things in less than 10 seconds. I think that's where the pressure really like rises. I've seen like people who know a lot also not do well when asked a question on stage, only because you know so much and you need to filter and fit that answer in 30 seconds. And that's a really difficult thing to do. Plus, you have so many people watching you. But thankfully, my interview went really well, and I was one of the top 16. Like, there were 85 participating countries, and I was in the top 16 for environmental awareness and intelligence.
Do you remember the question you had?
Surprisingly, most of my questions, and I was so thorough with the environment, but most of my questions were about gender equality and poverty, which also I felt very comfortable answering because of my previous experience. So my interview went well. Obviously, when I came out, I didn't think it went well. Because when you come out of an interview, you think, oh, you knew this and you knew that, and why didn't you say this? Like, why are you so stupid? And so that's what I was doing to myself. But then I saw my video again later, and I also saw the responses of people, and I thought I did a good job. So yeah, it worked out that way. I did feel inadequate in a lot of the competitions when it came to like just being the gown round or the swimsuit round or whatever. And every single time like a competition would end, I would just sit back and think, oh my God, I just had to do this. Or if only I had the time to do this before the pageant, I would have definitely like done a great job. Or if only I had support, I would have done a better job. And the comments keep pouring because they just post all these competitions online. So people just keep replying. And some people are so kind and so encouraging and so fantastic, and they write good things about you. But some people will just write things like, oh, she's trash. Oh, she's like ugly. Why is she in a pageant? And you're reading all of this like while you're in the competition. So it's very mixed, and it's difficult. But at the end of the day, it's a competition, and I think you want to do your best. So after a point, like I decided at the 15 days that I will stop reading comments and I will do what I can and enjoy my time there. I won Miss Friendship, which I wasn't anticipating, but I got a bronze in Miss Friendship, and I was in the top 16 of environmental awareness and intelligence. I didn't make it to the top 16 overall. But yeah, I think after coming back from the pageant, like that was the finale, and I made some like really incredible friends, and I was very encouraging of them, and they have done wonderful things after the pageant as well. And I'm really grateful to know them. I think just the community of these women and what I've been able to learn from them is absolutely fantastic. But after I came back, obviously I shouldn't call it PTSD, but after I came back, no, it was something like that, because like when you come back, you just think about all the things you could have done better. But the truth is that given the circumstances, you couldn't have done better. And so like it took a lot of time for me to get over my hindsight bias. Like there were just days when I would think, oh my God, that gown looks so bad on stage. I wish I had picked up another gown. When the reality was that I gave in my best. I gave in my time, money, effort, everything in getting that gown, and like it didn't look good on stage, and I could not have anticipated that. But when you come back, like you obviously have, because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, you want to have done better. So it took me, I think, a couple of months to get over that and realize that I did the best that I could have. Yeah.
Does it help you in general because you had it in the pageant, but this is a feeling that we all have at some point in different contexts. So does it help you to overcome this?
I think like when people say that time is the only thing that heals things, that is true, because sometimes you just cannot shut your mind up. Like you can meditate all you want, but, and I am all for meditation. Like I think people should do it, and it definitely helps. But sometimes when you're just waking up from sleep and you're thinking about, oh, I should have done this when this thing was happening, there's no controlling that. And you only forget that once more things happen in your life. Like you have more things to think about or look forward to or be happy about. And I think like it's with conversations, like similar conversations like the one that I'm having with you, with people, that I have been able to manage like the feelings I had around how I could have done better. But yeah, I think in one conversation, like this term that I used, hindsight bias, remembering that really helps me, because I was talking to a friend of mine and he said, okay, well, I know that you think that you could have done a lot better, but you also just told me that you had only 7 days and you had all these things going on. And You did give your time and your money, and what were you thinking when you got that gown? And the truth is, I was so excited about being in that gown. And I thought that I had made the best decision that I could have before going into the pageant. I was like, okay, so I have done the best, and this is the best gown available to me, and I'm spending all of my savings on this, and this is going to be fine. But it didn't work out, and that's not something that I'm responsible for. It's a lot easier now, because every single time that happens, I can tell myself it's a hindsight bias, where I'm thinking about something that I've taken out of context and I'm beating myself up for it. But the truth is, I did wonderfully well when it was happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really helpful. I'm really glad that person told me about this.
Yeah. And I guess, putting words and of course, like putting words on it, it really makes you aware of
it helps to reflect in a constructive manner about what happened.
And I have another question related to what you said as well. Like all these people, some people are kind, some people are like, yeah, why is she even here? So I wonder, because I think it's also something that we can all have as a feeling, but in a much smaller scale. Like, for example, me, or anyone post, I know stupid things like, posting on Facebook, posting on LinkedIn, you're always afraid that someone is going to trash you. Like, at least me. But it's still, it's a small scale. Still, it's my own network of people I know. But you reach this level where it's people you don't know, and I wonder how do you deal with that?
Honestly, at the beginning, I didn't deal with it very well. I used to get very affected with what people were saying. But I think it's a skill you've got to learn, especially if you're ambitious, because any single time you try and reach a place where you become visible to other people, there are going to be some people who want to be in your place but can't for whatever other reason. And they're going to hate you for it. And that's on them, but it should not affect you. There are going to be other people who have a very, very specific idea of how something should be. And they're going to hate you for being there if you don't fit that idea. Right? And then there is the third thing where they especially, and I think this is not just limited to pageants, like at any point, even in politics, for example, it's not that somebody knows you as a person. They just like or dislike what you're doing in the position that you have based on their preferences. Right? So I think it was terrible when it was happening, but it was such a good life lesson for me that you need to have decided who your people are and who you're going to take blatant criticism from and who you're going to ignore. Because a lot of times what people are saying about you is not on you, it's on them, because they're feeling all sorts of things that are not in your control, right? And obviously earlier, there have been times that obviously I wasn't made of very, very thick skin. I wouldn't say I'm even right now, but there have been times when somebody said something really cruel about me or trashed me or something online, and I've just cried because what do you do? Because you have all this pent up emotion. And I think people say, oh, you're weak because you're crying. Because no, I'm crying because that's the emotion I'm feeling, and it would help me to release that emotion and feel strongly about whatever I'm feeling after that. So yeah, there are times when people would really get you down, but I think over time of people saying whatever they're saying, you can externalize what they're saying and say, okay, this is their problem to deal with. If they're upset with this and they think I'm trash, they need to deal with that. But and then think that if my pageant coach is telling me that, hey, your hair didn't look right in that whatever shoot you did, then I'll take that because she's my coach and she knows what she's talking about and she knows what's needed to do better at the place that I'm at. Right? So I know that she's not coming from a vicious place. She's not coming from a place to put me down. So I know that. And of course, like I said, there are people who also always encourage you and they're very proud of what you're doing. And there's also an internal feedback, right? I also knew, and while you're competing with other people, you also know who's performing well and who's not and what's needed. So you learn that while you're going through the competition. You learn those things and you realize that, I would love for this person to win. I would love for this person to win because they worked beyond like what I could have thought was possible, right? And you see that for people, and you're happy for them because you think that they've done that much work, and they are very deserving of title it is. So it's not being completely oblivious and saying, oh no, I'm the best for everything, and like, why are people saying that shit about me? It's also like very reflective and very honest feedback to myself about, okay, so I've done all of these things and I'm doing well, and maybe I won't win because I think I could have done this better. But yeah, that's the way it is, which is being honest with myself and knowing who I should take feedback from and who not.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a very important advice. So that was the end of your pageant life?
Yeah, I mean, after I came back from the pageant, I still because I was chosen 1 week before the international pageant. I still had 1 year to just be Miss South India until the next person was chosen.
Mm-hmm.
So I continued the work that I was doing before, working on different projects. I started, I think I may be missing the timeline here, but I think I started again working part-time with different organizations or learning something online. I took a course on sustainable development online. So yeah, I kept myself occupied, and I also thought, okay, that once that one year gets over, like I need to figure out what I want to do. So I also took that time to figure out where I wanted to go and where I wanted to be. Deciding what my next step should be.
Did the title of Miss Earth India, either you realize something changed, either externally or inside?
Yeah, of course. Yes, it does. The funny thing is that I was in the social development sector for 4 years, and not a lot of people cared about that. Like, because I was fundraising for my classroom, and not a lot of people thought like, of course, some people came to help, and some people like did contribute to my class, but it wasn't. I would say it was not attractive in terms of like what I was doing. If I were to blatantly put it, of course, people were proud of me for what I was doing. But what Miss Earth did was that it kind of brought what I was doing with Teach For India into light. So people were like, oh, she has like on-ground experience, and she's also in a pageant. Like, that's fantastic. It definitely opened doors. It's really funny, and I laugh about this a lot, but I was invited to speak at one of these events in India, which was about the environment. And having a crown really helps. Because like a tiara, because I remember this forum, like I was speaking, and there was another person speaking who had a PhD in something to do with the environment, and obviously like the person who actually knows the most was the person with the PhD. But I think what happened is that they kept me to speak in the end, and I think the PhD person was before me, and yeah, he went on stage and he spoke, and people were like, oh, okay, that's fine, great, good speech. And then I went on stage, and people were really excited to hear me speak or what I had to say. And I think that's a good example of of just how humans function in terms of what's attractive and what's influential. I don't think at that forum I was the most knowledgeable person. But at the same time, I think the package of me being like a pageant winner, along with the fact that I was working to advocate for the environment, like that was attractive to people. And that has been the case in many places where I have gained some kind of credibility to be invited to forums I would not have been earlier invited to, even though I would have had the same knowledge that I did now, right? So it definitely did open doors. Sometimes it's the opposite, and then people think that because you won a pageant, like you don't know a lot about anything, which is unfortunate, which is so unfortunate. I wish that people could like stop thinking like that in some cases for sure. But yeah, there have been times when I've been mansplained or like I've been told something because they thought that I don't necessarily understand it because I was invited to, I don't know, be at a certain place. Or there have been places where, because Bollywood is so tied to beauty pageants in India, that these college students have like told me to dance because like I'm Miss India, even though I was there as a speaker, so those things also happen, but I take it with a pinch of salt. I'm like, It's okay. That exists. But yeah, it definitely has made me realize that in some ways, that presentation matters, how you communicate, how you dress, how you, um, interact with people, how people, what's the first impression you make on their minds. Like, it matters. Like a lot of things, it's insidious because sometimes it's easy to say, oh, you're so superficial because you're judging someone because of the way you look. But that's just how the human mind functions. The first time, like, you get interested in speaking to someone, consciously or unconsciously, maybe because of the way that they look or the way that they sound, or the way that they're presenting themselves. And that's not just a pattern thing, that exists everywhere. And that is something that I've consciously started noticing now that I didn't earlier, but it definitely happens.
So, yeah, so I guess it gave you the platform that you were looking for. And then from that, you can just say, yeah, listen to this PhD person or listen to,
Yes.
stories of grassroots communities, etc., etc. Yeah, just want to double check with you if you had any time constraints.
No, I don't.
Okay, so we can continue a bit. I'll try. Let's.
I'm so sorry. I'm speaking too much.
No. For me, it's great. It's just I'm afraid that I don't know if you have any meeting after.
I do, but that's at 7, so plenty time.
Okay. Yeah. So you started to mention APYE a minute ago. So it was, yeah. How so? Maybe just to. I think I'm quite impressed with coming back again to when you were in filmmaking school. You decided to apply for the fellowship, which just to recontextualize, it's like 2 years. You don't know anything about this, but you're still like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna do a pageant. You still don't know anything about it, but you're still going to do it. And now we are more like into APYE stuff, or like social entrepreneurship, social innovation. Yeah, like how did you hear about APYE and what?
This was before I became Miss Earth. So it was again the time when I was auditioning and I had plenty of time to look into other things because modeling assignments were not that frequent. So yeah, I found it online on Google or Youth Opportunities or something. And I thought it was very interesting. So I was really interested in the Sustainable Development Goals in general because I realized that once I looked at them and their transition and I knew about the Millennium Development Goals as well. So when the Millennium Development Goals converted into Sustainable Development Goals, I obviously read about them, but I think what the United Nations has done exceptionally well is just the way that they have communicated the goals in the way that it's so approachable to everyone, kids, professionals, college-going students, elderly people, everyone. Like you look at them and it looks exciting and it's all-encompassing. And that's what I felt. When I first looked at the Sustainable Development Goals, I was like, this is so cool. I looked at that graphic and I said, 17 goals, this looks amazing and it's so colorful and bright and like it's so attractive. And so when I saw the opportunity of APYE, I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to apply to this because it has a focus on the Sustainable Development Goals and innovation and entrepreneurship. And also like very superficial purpose, but I wanted to go to Thailand. So it's like, might as well just go to Thailand as well. And so I applied and I obviously was, like for the program, I was looking for a scholarship. I didn't think like I could afford the whole thing at that point of time because I didn't have a job. And I was in a part-time thing at that point of time. So I was like, fine, I have 50% of this. If I get a 50% scholarship, I would definitely go. And thankfully, I got that 50% scholarship. APYE was one of the best, funnest, most amazing experiences ever because of the way that it is structured and the people within the program who run it. And kudos to Linka as well, because she was one of the organizers in the first year as well, and Millie as well. So when we went there, loved the energy. Like sometimes you just go into a space and you belong. And I think that's what APYE did. So there were people from all over the Asia Pacific. And I think all of us Indians, I think we were 5 or 6 of us Indians at APYE. And we all decided that like we're cool and all, but we need to mingle with other people. So we decided to I had roommates who were Filipinos, and I started hanging out with them. And the local immersion was fantastic because I had picked my goal as quality education, and I got to see the education system of Thailand. And we were placed, we were in a school. We were in Bangkok itself, but we were in a school for a week. And that was really good because it had so many similarities with the education system in India, but also so many differences. And that was really good to learn. And after that experience, just the final pitching at the UN, that entire experience, and I didn't realize at that point how good a job they had done. But what APYE did that is different from most of the other conferences that I have attended is that they created a space and a network which was going to see each other even after the conferences. And I have thought a lot about how they did this, but I think it's a mixture of keeping people at the center and working with them. Even though there is a purpose of teaching or telling people about the sustainable development goals, making them learn about social innovation and entrepreneurship. They did a great job at culture. So, and the cool thing is that my Filipino friends and my roommate from APYE, unfortunately my family could not come to the finale of Miss Earth, so they came to support me in the Philippines. So yeah, I think that's the kind of strong ties that they made. And I've met one of these APYE people in 3 countries so far. So we just keep meeting each other at different places. So yeah, this is they did do a great job at selection, and these are people who are definitely working and are very passionate about sustainable development goals or are learning about sustainable development goals. So after coming back, I think just being a part of the network was very, very valuable to me. And since then, I have been a part of 4 APYEs. First as a delegate, and then as a facilitator, and then as a mentor, and then as a judge. And this time it was the online APYE. I was also a moderator for that. So I think it's just I think it's become a lifelong thing where I'm going to be a part of some 50 APYEs in my lifetime, I think. But yeah, it was a great start for me in terms of recognizing that I am and could be a better advocate for the sustainable development goals.
So it went to add on basically
yeah. It strengthened my interest in the goals and also in social entrepreneurship in terms of understanding it. I am not an entrepreneur yet, but I may be in the future. And I think that if I do this podcast again 10 years later when I'm an entrepreneur, maybe I'll mention how APYE had a role to play with it. So yeah.
Is APYE what brought you to do the Jagrati Yatra?
Yes, partially. I think so. Jagrati Yatra also has they have a rigorous selection process. And before I applied to Jagrati Yatra, I think APYE had built my interest in the Jagrati Yatra. And I applied to Jagrati Yatra twice. The first year I was rejected. And I want to always talk about my rejections because I feel like on social media, we have so many places where people just keep talking about their successes, everything is going for them and they never fail. But the truth is that you fail 10 times before you get one success. And so I didn't get into Jagrati Yatra the first year. And I was like, no, you know what, I'm going to try again. And APYE definitely sowed the seed for it. But I was anyway interested in the sustainable development goals. Jagrati Yatra is different in the way of it focuses on social entrepreneurship and not so much on the goals because it has 4 or 5 streams.
Could you explain a bit JY in your own words?
Yes, I will. So Jagrati Yatra is an 8,000 kilometer train ride across India over 15 days where you get off at 12 or 13 different destinations. And at these destinations, you learn more from a social enterprise or from a social entrepreneur about social entrepreneurship. And you live on the train, you sleep on the train, you eat on the train, you bathe on the train. So the train becomes your home for those 15 days. There are people from all over the country and even abroad. So that's why Din Long and I both have been on the train, even though he's Vietnamese and French. So yeah, it's very exciting because the train brings together people from all socio-economic, cultural backgrounds you can think of. And it's a very diverse and interesting space within the train because people are very passionate about either a social or environmental issue or about social entrepreneurship. Some of them, there's so many people who have found their co-founders on the train. And there are also people who have found their spouses on the train. So yeah, it's really funny, but that happens. Yeah, so I was really interested since the beginning. My roommate at Teach For India, we actually used to make these yearly like charts where I'd write her name and my name, and then we'll put down 10 things we were going to do in the year. And the truth is we ended up doing only 2 or 3 of them every year, but it was good to have that. And she is someone who had been through, like she and I both had put down Jagrati Yatra while I was in the fellowship. So I knew about Jagrati Yatra since a very long time. But she went for the Jagrati Yatra and I didn't, because I just didn't apply to it in time or something like that. And then my interest was, it came back once I had already learned a little bit about the SDGs and I had been a part of APYE, and I had applied after APYE, but I think my excitement rose to another level once I had been at the pageant because of the fact that the train, like I said, was going to be such a diverse space and we were going to go all across the country. And I really wanted to do that. And my interest had strengthened because at the pageant, people would ask me questions about India. And there was no question that I would give a black and white answer to. It was always like, and there are a lot of stereotypes, right? So there would be questions around, there would be some really interesting and important questions around just gender equality in India and how does that work? Because while we have some cities, like we have urban spaces where women, they have rights and they're also independent and they're living their best life as they can. But safety is still an issue. Like you still have to think before you step out of the house a lot of times when you're living even in like the most urban cities. And then there is the other side of India where there is female feticide still existing in places. There's still like female child marriages, even though our law states that it's completely illegal, like these things still take place. So there's like such a huge divide. And I think the stereotype around India with like some of the media and some of the movies that are made about India. So the people outside of India have typically a pretty grim view of India. So as a representative of my country at Miss Earth, like a lot of these questions that came my way, whether it was about gender equality or like it ranged from that to cows and snakes, which is like very stereotypical. But I wanted to answer them the best way that I can. And I kept realizing there is no one answer to any question I'm being asked because we have such extremes in our country. We have great things and we have really, really like terrible things happening all at the same time. And so my experience in no way represents the experience of so many other people in my country. And so because of that, I was very excited to be on the train because it was a more just representation of the country in one place because there were people from everywhere and I wanted to know more. And so I was very excited. So anyway, I got through. And again, this funny things kept happening in 2017 because my interview call for Jagrati Yatra happened 30 minutes before my gown round. So I was sitting like with my hair up in my gown. And this person called Anurag had called me up to ask me questions. And I literally said to him that, hey, I have to go into a competition, but let's just talk. And I spoke to him for 20 minutes. And after that, and this time, like, not only did I get into the Jagrati Yatra, I got full scholarship. So I only had to pay the registration fee and nothing else. So I was mega, mega, mega excited. So I had so much to look forward to when my pageant ended, because I did the pageant in October, November, and then Jagrati Yatra was in December. So yeah, I was on the train after that.
So for me, one major difference between APYE and Jagrati Yatra, is so APYE is like young people from all over Asia Pacific, and Jagrati Yatra, it's so there are a few foreigners, like 10 people, but it's really like Indians. It's like four young Indians from everywhere. And yeah, I mean, I had a different experience because I'm not an Indian, so it's different, right? But I really wonder, like for you, you're surrounded by 400, but even if we count the staff cooking, the security, like, you are surrounded by 600, 700 Indians from every possible, so what is the feeling during 15 days?
I think one of the things that really surprised me was that the train did not feel weird to live in after 2 days. Like, it had become such a normal thing that we were living and sleeping and, talking and meeting and everything in the train. And the other thing was that I think Jagrati Yatra is able to create such a balanced space. Like, you had a lot of people working in social development, but they came with very widely different perspectives. And then usually what happens is that once you're like an educated, like Indian with a college degree, you sometimes just feel very entitled to the things that you're doing. You think you know more at some points, especially if you're working in the social development sector. Sometimes you may be working on a project and you think you have the answers, but the train kind of provides the space to include those who are living the reality of that situation, right? So we had women from rural India on the train. So if somebody was talking about working with rural women in India, you had them to give their ideas and thoughts and opinions right in front of you. And that I really appreciate, because it's one thing to sit in isolation and talk about an issue which you are not facing yourself, but it's another thing to have that conversation with the same confidence, or saying that I know all of these things, while the person who may be benefiting from your program, or who your program is defined for, is sitting in front of you. So I think that was very powerful and moving and incredible for the women who were there, and like the people in general, not just the women. But I think I really appreciate that for in the train, because I think the world has become such a place, right? I think with social media as well, you may have heard of all the algorithm that goes into all of your social media and defining everything according to the way you like it, and understanding you as a person, the data that they collect. And so the world is becoming more and more honestly, I think it's becoming very binary for everyone, in the sense that whatever I see is it's in alignment with what I think. So I think the rest of the world also feels and thinks the same as me, because that's the kind of media that I'm getting all the time. So if I am liberal and I keep getting messages from liberals all across the board, then it's not the best scenario, because I am not being challenged and I'm not being given the chance to learn from a different perspective. But I think the train was not like that. The train brought people together who thought very differently from each other, had very different experiences, all onto the same board, with just the one common thread, which was social entrepreneurship. And that was very interesting for me to see as an Indian. It was also very interesting because the train did stop at the big cities. So it stopped at Delhi, and it stopped at Mumbai, and it stopped at Bangalore. But we also went to villages and towns. We also went, and the most amazing thing is that we do this train ride at the end of December, going into January. And geographically, like I was blown away with India because we started our journey in Mumbai and we went to the south, and it was so hot and sweaty, and it was so difficult while going to the south because we were all just sweating the whole time, right? And it was just very, very hot. And then within 3 days, once we started our journey up north, everything had changed. Like the layers started, like once we started from the bottommost part of India, and we started going up, and every, like, I think 6-7 hours, we would have to put on another layer of clothing on us. And within just 2 days or 3 days, like we were freezing. I was under 5 layers and I was still shivering in Uttar Pradesh when we reached over there. So that was also like very, yeah, I think it was just like a really incredible experience if I look back at it. I was a facilitator on the train. So my responsibility was also to work with my entire cohort, and my cohort was focused on energy. And even though I was a facilitator, I think the cool thing is that, and this is the difference, again, a difference between APYE and Jagrati Yatra. I think Jagrati Yatra is a little more, it's at a higher level than APYE in terms of where you are in building your organization. Because APYE, I think, lays the foundation of you starting to understand something about about entrepreneurship. Of course, now over the years, we've come to a point where people are pitching like their organizations, either if they are in existence or they're incubating it and they're talking about that experience. But with Jagrati Yatra, what happened is that we got people who are actually working in the industry. So in my group, what happened is that the way that they built the organization before pitching. So at Jagrati Yatra, you have to pitch your idea in front of judges. And you do this like once you stop at one of the destinations. And my team, who is working to solve a problem in the energy sector, the cool thing is that you form an organization within your group where you define a role for yourself. So you define whether you're a technical officer, whether you're the CEO, whether you're going to be a communications person. And so it is very targeted. So when the judges are asking you questions, like you can clearly see which department it's going to and how these departments function with each other, which was a great learning experience for me. I think I learned more than I was ever able to help anybody in that group. But yeah, I was very lucky that I got a wonderful bunch of people to work with.
Cool. Yeah. And so, I mean, building on, because we spoke about a lot of communities, programs, networks, and also we spoke a bit about social media, but for the wrong reason. I just watched The Social Dilemma. So I'm not sure if you watched it. It's a bit scary. But yeah, you also, I mean, I don't know if you call yourself like this, but you're sort of social media influencer, no? I mean, you always promote SDGs on Instagram, and when you have this, when you do it, I mean, so wait, it's structured on, because you're also with like organization called Global Merit. I mean, I think
Global Merit, yes.
World Merit, yes. World Merit, which is another community you are part of. But I guess it gives you the opportunity to connect everything, right, together. I don't know if...
You mean on social media or with World Merit?
So yeah, okay, let me rephrase my question. So, you know, now that, and we didn't even speak about We Do yet, but... in general, I'll just
so sorry.
Flash forward a bit, but now that it's a question I ask myself as well, because you've been part of so many communities, from Teach For India, I lost track, APYE, JY, We Do, Global, World Merit, the Miss Earth, and I'm sure more that I don't even know. So from this, what, because also when you were heading to the Miss Earth final, I mean, you didn't know, but you were doing all these things to build on something, on your climate advocacy, as well as your pageant experience. So I'm wondering, what are you trying? What do you hope to build after, joining all these communities?
I think so. Obviously, when you're going through the experience, it's difficult to connect the dots between Teach for India and a pageant. They look like they're world apart, and they are in many ways. But I think one thing that I have built a lot through all experiences is leadership. I think when I started as a fellow at Teach for India, and then I was an associate. So obviously, there was a manager, and then a senior manager, and then a director, and then the CEO over me. So that's the hierarchy of where I was working at that point of time. And obviously, since I just started my career at that point of time, I was in a lot of ways I didn't take a lot of initiative, or I did not think that what I had to say had value, or had a lot of value, and other people had more important things to say. I was pretty quiet, I think, in a lot of ways when it came to the workplace. And with Teach for India, I think I learned a lot about community building. I learned a lot about empathy, about gratitude, and the experience generally humbled me a lot. It made me break a lot of my biases about what I thought about myself, about communities, about other teachers, and it made me realize that everyone's going through something, and you don't necessarily always understand what they're going through, but you've got to be open to listening and open to learning at all points. At Teach for India, I also learned to be very receptive to feedback, but also realize what feedback I'm getting, reflect on what I need to improve upon, and be proactive in asking for feedback with people I directly work with. So these were some amazing leadership skills that I learned at Teach for India. Everything I think that I was lacking in terms of how I was working at Teach for India, in terms of taking more initiative at work, or not speaking, or thinking that I didn't have value to add, I think that changed with the pageant. Because the pageant required me to tell my story, even though a very confusing story, but it required me to be able to tell my story over and over again and refine my story. And it required me to stay calm in the face of people saying things about me that were difficult to digest. It required me to not act out when people were saying things that, or be emotionally reactive when people were saying things that were upsetting. It taught me to have grace under pressure. It also it built so much confidence in myself, in terms of reaching out for things that you need, or saying your mind, or learning more to form an opinion before just having an opinion. And with all the work that I did on my own, the thing about taking initiative, that was all that my 2 years of working towards representing India was. Because I was not with an organization, I was my organization, I was my own brand. So I had to reach out to schools, I had to reach out to universities and say, I'm a finalist with Miss Earth, I would love to speak at your place and let children know more about the environment, or write to different organizations working with the environment and say, hey, I have interned with the Worldwide Fund for Nature before, and I have worked with this people before, and this is the experience I have. Do you have any opportunities that I can take? So taking that initiative increased a lot. And just that time, and I don't think people understand or value gaps that people take. When you think about taking a gap year, a lot of people think, oh, how am I going to justify the fact that I took a gap to my next employer? And people think, okay, so if you take a gap, you're just sitting and watching TV for 1 year, which is not true. Gap year essentially means that you take a time off from what you're doing to do other things, maybe not a full-time job, that would help you grow. And I am very proud of my gap years, I would say, because I think that the networks that I have, the community I've been able to build for myself, would not have been possible. And the confidence and the initiative that I have now would not have been possible with if I had not done that for myself. So yeah, I think what the larger thing, I don't know. I am interested in entrepreneurship. I do envision myself leading an organization one day. I think it's going to be in the social development sector, either like working for the environment or at the intersection of gender and education. But I still have some time to go before reaching that place. In terms of the long term, I know the things that I value now. Like, I know that I value fairness and justice like a lot. Like, it makes me angry when things are not going right, not just for me, but for another community, or if people are being harmed, or if animals, in a sense, like if the jungles are burning, like if the Amazon rainforest is burning, and the fact that we've become so normalized to that. Like at the beginning of the year, it was like, oh my God, the Amazon is burning. And today it's like, okay, so the Amazon is burning, and also the Siberian forests are burning, and Indonesia just burned, and now there were California fires. We are getting so normalized to things that are apocalyptic that it's scary to me. So I know that I value those things. I value justice and fairness, but I also value significance for myself. Like, I know I'm ambitious in the way, and I'm not sorry about saying that I want to be significant. I want to not be mediocre. I am not scared to say that anymore. I think earlier I used to think that it's a very arrogant thing to say, but no, I think significance matters to me. The fact that I'm able to influence someone, even if it's just one person. The fact that in the work that I do, people come to me and find me a reliable source of whatever the role that I'm playing is. That's important to me, and which is why I think with my current organization, I've been able to do a great job in the job that I have, and I love it. So if you look at notes from my appraisals, from my managers in 2 different organizations, you will see that everything that we were reflecting upon, like at that point of time at Teach for India, the things that I should have been doing, my manager now would have said that I do very well right now. And so that I'm very proud of. And I think even though for the life of me, I could not connect the dots between a Teach for India and a pageant while I was going through it, I see the connection clearly now. I see the connection of the skills that I have learned in a pageant, and how I can utilize it in the work that I do today, which wouldn't have been possible if I had not done that. I would have grown in an organization, maybe in a different way, but it would have been different for sure.
And can you share a bit what is the work that you are doing today?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. So through APYE, so at APYE, I met different organizations, and what happened is that once I was getting close to my 1 year of my pageant contract being over, once I knew that the next Miss Earth is going to be selected, I was like, okay, I need to find something for myself. What do I want to do? And I wanted to go back to the social development sector. And so I looked into different organizations across India where I wanted to work. At the same time, what happened is that with APYE and the connections that I had made, there was an opportunity to be a consultant at the UN at that point of time in Thailand. And oh my God, like growing up like in a small city, like, and being, doing a pageant, and after that somebody saying there's an opportunity for you at the UN, like that's super exciting. But what that did was that it opened my mind to be working outside of India. So I had never thought that I would. I mean, I had thought that maybe in the future sometime I would be working out of India. But when I was looking for jobs, I didn't think at that point of time that I would be working out of India. So it opened my mind, and I was like, oh, so there's this opportunity. And I was in talks, but I think financially it was not making a lot of sense for me, because I think once you're a consultant with the UN, you're paid by the project and not like a salary every month. And at that point in time, I didn't have savings for me to sustain myself in Bangkok with like being paid once in 3 months. And so I thought to myself, even though like the pay was decent, I was like, okay, I can't sustain myself like this, but let me look at like other places as well. And at the same time, like I had remembered at APYE in the same year when I was a facilitator at APYE, I had met these incredible women from WeDo. So, and some of my friends at APYE had also been a rising star at WeDo. I didn't understand what that meant at that time. But I just gone up to them at APYE on mentor day. So these women had come to mentor like the delegates of APYE in Bangkok. And I went to them and I asked them like, how are you? And I've heard about We Do. And they were very kind and very sweet. And they told me a little bit about the organization. So I started around this time, I started looking into We Do as well. And then I saw that they had a position open that I thought I could do. So I applied and I wrote a really charged like cover letter, I remember. And I was very emotional when I was writing that cover letter because We Do has a vision that I really resonated with. The vision is that half of all world leaders would be women in the future and should be women in the future. And another like really important thing that We Do believes is in that all women who strive to reach their full potential should have the opportunity to do so. And I think that's how my parents have raised me, right? Like even though I come from a smaller city where there is like gender inequity, where boys are sometimes given more preference than girls, and given more independence than women in deciding things for their lives. Like my parents always, and we are two daughters, I have an elder sister. My parents always encouraged me to like, go out of the house and go, expose myself to different opportunities. And even though I have just been dropping like huge bombs at home, just saying, I'm studying the media, no, now I'm teaching, and now I'm modeling. So like these conversations like were not the easiest to have at home, as in like I took a lot of time to even say them out loud in the first place. But they have been really supportive, and that's made a huge difference to my life. And so I really resonated with the vision of We Do, and I wrote like a really nice cover letter about why I want to work with them. And then they had some pre-work, and then they had 3 interviews, and then I got the job, and I was super excited. And then I moved to Bangkok, and I've been working with them for the past 2 years now. I complete 2 years on 15th October this year. I have had 2 exceptional managers who have given me the space to grow. I was in one role last year, and I took on another role this year. So now I'm in a combined role in which I help to select, I reach out to women across Asia through different universities and organizations. If anybody listening has an organization like that, please connect with me. But I reach out to different women across Asia, tell them about our programs, and then work on the entire selection process. And then I also select mentors from all over the world and match them together so that they can work together on their goals and their leadership development. So I've been working with them, and yeah, I think that's where I am right now. We finally reached where I am right now. But yes, because of the pandemic, I've had to move back home. Like I actually moved before the pandemic, so I think the timing really worked out for me. But I've been at home and I've been working from home, but I have strong ties with everyone in my team, and we've been working well together so far. Yes, that's where we are now.
So we finally reached the present. So I have a few questions about the future. Now that we are approaching 2 hours of discussion, what are some questions that you are asking yourself these days?
One question I'm definitely asking is in terms of my education and what I want to learn. I want to study further, and I'm just trying to understand. So my last degree was in media, but all the work that I've done since has largely been in the development sector. And so I am looking to learn more. But I think if you talk about the long term, like I said, I want to be leading organizations. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to be my own organization or another organization that I'm leading, but I see myself leading teams to work for communities in the future. I think in the next 5 years, that's what I want to reach, in a leadership role where I'm managing not just one team, but different teams to work together towards an outcome that means something to me and to the rest of the team as well. So yeah, I want to grow as a leader and as an organizer, for sure. I want to, and I know there's also this question of how you leverage social media. I think it's a great tool, but at this point, I'm taking a break from social media to kind of know. I want to take some time to understand who I am as a brand. What do I care about? How do I want to, present myself to the world? Because so far it's been everything that I've done, like my account on Instagram as well. It's like a personal account of whatever's happening in my life. And that's been great so far because there's a lot that's happened in my life in the last few years. But I think going forward, I want that medium to be like a message in itself. That, this is what it means. This is who I am. And this is what you can hear more about from me, and hopefully become like a more credible source of information in that specific field or for that specific thing. So yeah, I want to lead in my organization and outside of it, I guess. That's my plan.
So it's great. Actually, my next question is really linked to what you just said. How do you want people to know you for and to remember you for? And I think it's perfectly linked to what you just said about thinking about your own branding.
That's such an existential question. Yes. That's a really difficult question. Like I said, I'm figuring that out. It's not easy for me because of the fact that I've had many different experiences. But I think those experiences have also equipped me to come to a conclusion about it. So I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't have an answer to that question, but I'm comfortable not having that answer right now, because I think it will take me a little bit of time to just like move away from, because I think these days what's happening, it's like there's so many platforms to talk at and there's so many issues, because now you know about all these issues, right? Earlier you had like the most immediate issue that was affecting you, that you cared about and you did something for. Now all of this information is right in your face every day, all the time. And so you want to talk about like so many things, right? So in the past, I've spoken for like zero hunger, and I've talked about education, I've talked about gender equality, and now become an ambassador for 4 or 5 places. One is related to the SDG, one is related to good health, one is related to giving devices to children in India who don't have access to online classes or don't have devices at home. But there are many like different things happening. I think in terms of value, I've been very sure and clear about the fact that one of the things that I always filter out is what I want to talk about on my social media. Obviously, I'm talking about my life, but I've restricted it very much to promoting causes and not specifically promoting brands, because as a pageant title holder, you always have the opportunity of different brands approaching you and saying, can you put a picture with this, with these shoes and, this makeup and whatnot. But, and I think that's a great opportunity, nothing wrong with that. But I've been very clear since the beginning about the fact that I want to promote causes. But I think that if I want to grow my reach, that I need to kind of decide where that message is coming from. Decide why should people listen to me and not somebody else? Why should people follow me? And then work on what that means for people who may be following me. So yeah, that's not clear yet. But at least I think I'm on the right path. So I'll figure it out as we go along. And it's okay to not have all answers. It's okay, because I'm definitely a person who every year for the past few years have thought, oh my God, I have to do 38,000 things this year. And if I don't do it this year, the world will end. And that feeling is natural. I think a lot of people feel that I've not done this and I've not done this and not done this. I have to do it this year. But I think in the last 2 years, I've been it's okay, one thing at a time. I'm going to learn this thing this year and I'm going to leave everything else that I want to do for later. And I think that really helps me, because then I'm able to do that one thing properly. Because earlier I was just trying to do all 38,000 things together and none of them were getting done. Yeah, I'm sorry. This isn't a clear answer, but I think that's where I'm at.
No, I mean, you're working on it. And I guess it was also one question that you are asking yourself. And yeah, I mean, it's, as you said, you'll come back to Lifeline in 10 years when you are CEO of your cultural startup, and I will ask you again.
Yes, you must.
And yeah, so Yeah. So wait. Let me. So I usually ask this question to conclude, which is, what could be 3 hashtags that you would select to describe yourself?
Oh
And
my
I
God,
know.
can I get back to you tomorrow? Three hashtags to describe myself. Hmm. Oh my God, that is a really tough question. Can I take 28 hashtags? Okay. I'm gonna take 30 seconds. Give me.
Yeah. Take that. No worries. No worries.
Three hashtags to describe myself. Wow. I don't know if you can describe yourself with the word. I think one hashtag would have to be experiential, because I just like, if I want to do something, I just go ahead and do it, and I don't worry about how things are going to connect, because I've always learned something. That's my number one hashtag. And the other two would have to be, can we just stick to one? Experiential?
All right. So one hashtag is experiential.
Yeah, I think, if that makes any sense. I don't know if people can describe themselves as experiential, but I'd say that, because I think that's largely defined my life in the past decade, at least.
Yeah. Wow. In the past decade. Oh.
Yes, for sure.
Cool. Thank you so much, Shaan. Where can people find you, connect with you, and why should they connect with you? You mentioned we do, but maybe there will be other interesting things.
Okay. Yes. Then my hashtags for why you should connect with me: sustainable development goals, storytelling, and third hashtag could be, I don't know, just because you want to. Like, just whatever the reasons are. I think my main hashtags would be like, you can connect to me over sustainable development goals. I really value that. Second, over storytelling. I want to be a good storyteller. If you're a good storyteller, or if you want to discuss anything about storytelling. And the third I think I would stick to education. Like, that's something that education and environment. If that goes together, then that's my third hashtag.
All right. So should they send you a message on Instagram, on LinkedIn?
Okay. So the cool thing is that I am, I don't know if I should spell it, but it's Shaan Suhas Kumar on all platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. So I am just Shaan Suhas Kumar everywhere. And that's my handle, not just my name. So it's ShaanSuhasKumar. So if you do @Shaan Suhas Kumar on Instagram, you'll find me. If you do Facebook.com/Shaan Suhas Kumar, you'll find me. @Shaan Suhas Kumar on Twitter, and on LinkedIn, I think you'll just have to type the whole name in the search box and you'll find me. So yeah, easy peasy.
All right. So yeah, everyone, reach out to Shaan Suhas Kumar on every possible platform to speak about storytelling, SDGs, and education, or anything.
Pageants as well, or anything that you heard about in this whole thing. Yeah.
Cool.
I could give 10 more hashtags for sure.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Shaan, for this super intense conversation. I really loved it. And yeah, see you in 10 years.
No, please see me before that. But you can, yeah, see you on Lifeline in 10 years or maybe 5 years. Let's see.
Cool. Thank you, Shaan.
Thank you, Dinlong.
Thank you so much for listening to the intense and amazing journey of Shaan. And yeah, she said feel free to contact her and reach out to her for anything that might have resonated with you during this interview. And also, please do tell her if you enjoyed it so that she can know. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Lifeline on the platform that you are currently using. And it would be amazing if you can share with your friends and share the story of Shaan to an even bigger audience. In the next episode, you will be meeting Gladys, a fearless filmmaker from the Philippines who co-founded Development Innovation Insider, which is a content creator and solution provider for the bottom of the pyramid. Here is an extract and see you next time.
I just really want people to know that I'm this person who came from the province of the Philippines, a small town, in the mountainside. And I did my best to become who I want to be. And I created something that, you wouldn't even imagine creating. And I want to spread that positivity. I want to spread that inspiration to the young people, especially those who are in the grassroots, that they can really live their dreams. At the same time, they can impact their own communities as well if they want to. So in this world where consumerism and capitalism is a big thing, you don't have to be sucked into that, because you can do your own thing and just be brave and learn a lot from your experiences. So I think I would love people to see me as that, a driven person and fearless person. I just really look back to my life before, like if you're from the grassroots, you won't even imagine doing things like this, traveling around the world and stuff. So yeah, I just really want people to know that you can do it.